a comment about the movie we just saw. I have to say that sitting there myself felt more like the it really was than anything I've seen before. Even though I've seen that movie, I'd kind of forgotten how powerful it is. And probably the first few scenes in which they fired off cannons startled some of you. And the firing of machine guns and occasional rifle fire. And that was such common noise for those of us who were over here. Now, we didn't hear the cannons up close like that because artillery pieces were well behind us. The biggest pieces would be as much as 12 miles behind the front lines. And the 155, 155 millimeter pieces were probably 5 or 6 miles behind the front lines. And the 105s, 105 millimeter pieces, probably that's what you saw being fired, several there, we're still a couple of 3 miles back. So we, of course, in the infantry did not consider anybody in the artillery to be anything other than mere bit players in the fighting of the war. They, of course, disagreed with that and said, look, if you listen to those things going off for a day, you probably will have a hearing aid before you go home. But those are the interplays of the little competitions that we all had with each other. I was reminded when I saw the cows in the field that tragically thousands of cows were killed because they were obviously placidly meandering through the fields, and the artillery would suddenly begin exploding, and it was a terrible thing. We had men who, particularly fellows who'd been raised on the farm, who were very careful to put cows out of their misery if they saw ones that had been wounded and damaged. And they did that as an act of kindness. When you go down to Omaha Beach, if you go down, be aware that the climb back up is rather, it's not quite as steep as what we just did, but it's maybe longer. There are steps down there, and it's not as challenging a climb, except for those of us who've already climbed. I was so glad to find a place to sit down after climbing up there, then standing through the movie, then walking down, then walking through the other museum. And I found Mary Ann over in a little cafeteria. Oh, she didn't want you to know that. But I was so glad to plop down on a chair, so I'm debating whether I'll go down on the beach or not. Point being that if you do go down to the beach, it's quite an experience. You will be standing where D-Day Omaha Beach happened. And you will be standing in an area where many men were wounded and many died. One thing though, when you see the movie Saving Private Ryan, you get the feeling that Omaha Beach was maybe a few hundred yards wide. Actually, it was several miles wide, and men came in at various points, so it wasn't quite as compact as the movie makes it seem. But nonetheless, an estimated 2,000 or more American boys died in a matter of hours on that beach. It's a time, therefore, to stand in quiet introspection. And just remember that many of those boys are buried up there in that cemetery. And they had no choice once they got out of those boats. They had to run for the seawall. And so many of them didn't make it. When you go out on the into the cemetery, I would like to ask you to go in this spirit. Of course, you'll all be respectful and be touched by it, I think. But don't just see it as acres of white crosses. But I would like to suggest you wander among the crosses and pause in front of a cross and look down and read the name. William Smith, Kansas City, 357th Infantry, July 6, 1944, you may see. And that's probably a 19, 20, 21-year-old kid. If his rank, if it says captain, he may have been 22 or 3. But say a word for him. There probably are boys there whose family are gone now in 68 years, and maybe nobody has included them in their prayers for a long time. So go in that spirit and see what you feel. Here's what I wanted to say. We're not all alike. Some of us are touched by things that roll right over others of us. When you're out among the crosses and you see a friend, don't walk up and say, "Hey man, isn't this weather great?" While that person may be feeling a lot of the power of where they are right now, it's good if we can walk each, not necessarily alone, but with somebody who shares what we're feeling, and kind of allow everybody their privacy and their a little bit of time to just think about whatever thoughts come, whatever memories you may have. And I guess I'm saying just don't walk up to one of our friends here and start talking without being sensitive to where they might be at that